Hello friends, tonight we're going to take a look at the Microtech Dirac Delta. It's beautiful, it's sexy, it looks like the cipher and a channel changer had sex and made this crazy baby. This knife is new and exciting. It's very new, in fact. Mine is one of the proof run ones that are starting to pop up here and there. The Dirac Delta is the larger version of the Dirac, which was released earlier this year, and it's closer in size to a UTX 85. Very, very reasonably sized knife. I unfortunately don't have a Dirac, but maybe we'll change that. I suspect that the Dirac Delta is named for the mathematical function, which, when graphed, looks a bit like the blade of this knife most of the time. Though my math trivia is a little rusty, I might be wrong, and if I am, I'm sure someone out there will tell me. So what is this knife? Why does it exist? This knife exists to take on the Benchmade Infidel directly. Before we go any further, I'm going to mercilessly mock the Benchmade Infidel in this review. So if you own one and you have tender, sensitive little ears, you may want to watch something else right about now. Anyway, Microtech knives have the button on the top right there. Yeah, I find this position to be most natural. Meanwhile, Benchmade produced the Infidel, an OTF with the button on the side, like a channel changer. Well, or like the Dirac or Dirac Delta. I find this position to be less natural, but many people prefer the Benchmade's button position on the side. I can't fault you for that. And there was no Microtech option for these folks. If your hand is shaped a certain way where this is more comfortable for you, then, well, you kind of need to follow that. Comfort is important with the tools that we use. In the last decade, the popularity of OTF knives has exploded, and for reasons unknown to me, probably because the company helps them cut up perfectly good guns, law enforcement officers have often chosen to carry Benchmades over the superior Microtechs, or at least that's what I see and hear from folks. Many of the people that I've talked to have told me that they just like the button position better on the Benchmades, and hey, like I said, if your hand shape works better with that button position, you got to follow that. I totally understand. Microtech listened, and now we have the Dirac and Dirac Delta. The Dirac is just a bit smaller than the Troodon and the UTX 85, as we saw, and the Delta is about the size of a combat Troodon or cipher. And I have a handy cipher here to show you how close they are in size. They're pretty close. The Dirac Delta is a little bit smaller, which a lot of people will find appealing. So in other words, now we have a size for any application and occasion. Collect the whole set. Now, regardless of your various preferences, sexual or otherwise, there's a Microtech to suit you. Hooray, you don't have to buy the tacky Benchmade Infidels anymore. Look at how gorgeously symmetrical this knife is. It's beautiful. It's also truly ambidextrous. It looks like $1 million, but doesn't cost $1 million. The price is very, very right on these. They tend to be a little bit cheaper than the Infidels. And that's for a proof run. Surely the production models will be a little bit less. At least traditionally they are with Microtech. With the simpler contour of the handle, this knife looks a little bit like the classic Italian autos of decades past, only done in Microtech's futuristic Blade Runner aesthetic. It's awesome. And now a shameless plug. If you like my videos, please consider supporting me on Patreon. YouTube denied me monetization, so I'm entirely viewer supported. Videos are expensive to make, especially the endurance testing of firearms, and your support will help me make better videos more often. I'm sorry for the delay between videos lately, but money is tight during the summer, and I'm not going to lower my testing standards. I'm not going to borrow a gun, shoot it for a day, and try to give you a good review. It's just not possible. So if you want to see more videos more often, please support me on Patreon. You can also support me by subscribing to my channel, though at the end of the day, I'm honored that you would even want to watch my terrible videos in the first place. Truly, thank you. Features. The Dirac Delta is a double-action OTF, or out-the-front knife. Slide the button forward, and the blade deploys. Slide it backwards, and the blade retracts. The button on this one is extremely stiff. It probably requires 2 or 3 times the force of a standard Microtech. Let's take a look at that. So, the Ultratech is a breeze. The Cipher is a breeze, and the UTX 85 is a breeze. But it's a feature in this case because of where the button is, and I'll show you what I mean later. You don't want this one to be easy to retract because your thumb is covering it when you hold the knife. You can see the problem there. So they gave it the right amount of force, and it's easy to deploy it. It's just tough to get the blade back in there. and I wouldn't have it any other way. So the blade is 3.5 inches long. The handle is 5.75 inches long, and with the blade deployed, we have an overall length of 9.25 inches. The handle is made of 6061 T6 aluminum, and the knife weighs a scant 4.5 ounces. Though that's not the lightest knife ever, that is light for a knife this size. The blade is made of 204P. Hopefully you can see that. Though there are some LMAX examples floating around, though LMAX is an awesome steel, 204P is an amazing steel, and 204P is the American equivalent of imported Bowler M390. These proof run knives all have Microtech signature double edge. I don't know if they will put out other blade shapes, but I would assume they will. They usually do. And this gives the knife a lovely symmetry. There, the dagger blade, very beautiful. This one has a black handle and bronzed hardware. The pocket clip is the deep carry style, and it's very deep carry, all the way to the edge. We've got on the clip the knife serial number and birth date, and the Microtech logo and the claw logo, and you can see that mine's marked as being part of the proof run. At least I hope you can see that. And at the back, we've got the traditional Microtech glass breaker. Why should you choose a Microtech? Frankly, the Benchmade Infidel isn't good enough. I've discussed why more than a few times, but it's worth saying again. The fit and finish of the Infidel doesn't compare to anything Microtech makes. Microtech's manufacturing process makes for very tight tolerances, so there's very little play in the blade. The switch feels great, and they just feel nice to fire. The Benchmades that I've seen are less consistent. They don't feel as good to fire, and the handles are awful fat chodes that bulge in your pocket, and that's not nearly as much fun as it sounds like it would be. The Infidel itself, just to look at it, it's as tacky as its name. Look at that goddamn thing. And yeah, let's talk about the name for a second. In addition to being downright distasteful, the name caters to a certain crowd of tactical knuckle draggers and Molin Labe troglodytes who get the warm fuzzies when they pat their pockets and feel the reassuring bulge of the Benchmade. And it's certainly the only reassuring bulge that they're going to pat in their own pants anyway. From a purely aesthetic standpoint, the Benchmade looks like a $100 knife from China, and it feels like one too. In fact, if it were $100, I wouldn't be complaining about it. It would be a good bargain at that point. But for $425 or whatever the hell they sell for, holy shit. Yeah, that's a lot. So skip the Benchmade, get a Microtech. Why should you choose this particular Microtech? The Dirac Delta is similar in size to the Combat Troodon and the Cypher. The Cypher is my favoriteest knife ever in the whole wide world. In the history of knives, it's my favorite. So I don't have a Combat Troodon here, but we'll compare it to the Cypher. Also, let's just have Microtech show and tell time. Let's just get them all out. Okay, so the Cypher. Once more, you can see they're pretty close in size. Yeah, that's a beautiful sight. Let me get it where you can kind of see it all. Okay, so ciphers are rare. Odds are good that you're not considering a cipher if you're trying to choose between this and something else, because odds are good that you can't even find a cipher if you want one. There just aren't that many of them out in the wild. So it's probably down to a Dirac Delta and the Combat Troodon. Really, it's going to come down to whether you like the button on the top or the side. The knives are pretty similar otherwise in practical function. But there's something else to take into account. The Delta is about $100 cheaper than the Combat Troodon. That's a lot of cash. You may also need to consider that the Combat Troodon comes in other blade shapes, some of which are more utilitarian and geared towards work tasks than the double edge. Whichever you choose, though, you're getting an awesome OTF. But oh hell, let's just break out some of the other Microtechs and just put them near this thing so we can take a look. The Halo. I love the Halo. Yeah. That's a pleasing sight, isn't it? Let's look at the SOCOM too. Yeah, you can see the SOCOM's another kind of large one. I like that I'm trying to like artfully arrange them here in the middle of this video. Like you don't have better shit to do than watch me line these up. You know, like I have terrifying OCD or something, which I don't have that. Here's an Ultratech. Why'd I close it again? All right. Yeah. So there's kind of an array of different ones. So you can kind of see how they're sized. We looked at the UTX. That one's probably not in frame. Oh, what the hell? I'll just scrunch them all up and scratch them all to hell. So yeah, you kind of see there's a Microtech for every occasion and every size that you might need. I think for daily carry, I mostly carry the Cypher, but I also carry, if I'm having to do workshop stuff, the SOCOM is a great option for that too. But you can see now where the Dirac Delta fits in with all the others. How does the Dirac Delta perform? This is a great knife. It feels great to fire, the blade moves smoothly, and the handle is well designed. Mine, like every other Microtech I've ever owned, was razor sharp from the factory. Let's talk about aesthetics, as visual design is a big part of why we buy Microtechs. The body is smooth on the top and back, while the sides taper in twice. Your fingers fit right in there. It looks almost like an Egyptian column or something. Yeah, that feels good. And we've got this jimping at the top and bottom of the sides. It doesn't look like much, but it works really, really well. The pocket clip really settles into your hand. It kind of helps me index my grip. It sort of fits in between those two fingers there. I really like it. And it doesn't get in the way. The knife just feels great in the hand. So let's talk about the color because it's very interesting. The black blade is the standard black coating, like all my Microtechs. Let me see if I've got a black blade nearby. Yeah. So it's the same black that you see on all of these, but the handle color is different. It's supposed to be black, but it almost looks like a navy blue, and it is very, very beautiful. There's definitely a blue tint there. For comparison, the Cypher is more blackest black. The halo is sort of a gray black. Same goes for the Ultratech, although it seems to almost have a bluish tint. But anyway, I know it's a small thing. I just thought it was a cool color. I really like it. And then we've also got our beautiful bronze hardware here, which also looks a little bit darker on this model to me than some of the others, but that could just be the color of the body. I don't know. The knife fires very, very smoothly. If I had to liken it to another Microtech, I'd compare it to the Cypher. Again, they sound pretty similar. The Combat Troodon sounds and feels different when it's actually firing. So why is it so hard to retract the Dirac Delta? You want it to be difficult. That is definitely intentional because of where the button is. Look at this. When you grip this knife, your thumb is going right on the button, either on top of it, in front of it, across it. It's going on the button. And if you're using this knife hard, you're going to be applying pressure to the button. Just to put into perspective how hard it is, I'm going to put my thumb on the switch and bear down on my desk. Yeah, that's tough. But with two hands, it's no big deal. It's really easy. And a lot of the time, I can get it with one hand if my hands aren't sweaty and I'm not holding the knife, all the way out with my arms fully extended. But to put it into comparison, look at how much easier even the Cypher is. And the Cypher has a reputation for being difficult to fire. So with the button being on top of the Ultratech or any of these, your thumb is to the side. You're not... When you're using the knife hard, you're not running the risk of your hand moving back and closing the blade. In fact, let's do this again. Very little pressure, and the knife closes. I was bearing down so hard with this one that there's actually a pretty big divot in my desk from the glass breaker. One more time. Look at that. That's a noticeable dimple. So you want it to be hard because it's going to keep the blade open if you're doing something difficult with it where your hand is under a lot of pressure. It's really great. In fact, when I first saw this knife, I had wondered, one of my concerns was, under hard use, am I going to accidentally close it? But no, there's no danger of that. So what's it like to carry this thing? Well, first we need to discuss what this knife is for. Really, the double-edged Microtech blade shape is for defense. This shape just doesn't work for tool tasks for a variety of reasons. But to defend myself, there's no other blade shape that I would rather have. For defense, I'm usually carrying my Cypher. But for the last few weeks, for the purposes of this review, I've been carrying this thing. And as a defensive knife, it excels. The pocket clip lets it ride very deep in your pocket, but this raised bit here, you can grip that and pull it out really quickly. The clip is also very, very secure for a spring steel one. I thought that the extra thickness from the button was going to be noticeable. It's really not. Like many other instances, just a little more thickness. It's not as important as people say it is, and most of the time they don't even notice, even after they've made a really big deal about it. It just doesn't. It doesn't really matter. It's not important. I get the Dirac Delta out of my pocket at about the same speed as an Ultratech. It's pretty quick. It's really quick. It's not as quick as the Cypher, though, which has this titanium clip, but it's quicker to get this out because of all the grip on the clip, and also because this just doesn't carry as low in your pocket. So it's all a trade-off. Titanium clips are also a pain in the ass with thicker fabrics because they're not as flexible. And like I said, you don't get that deep of a carry. So anyway, I've come to think of the Delta as my dress OTF. The Cypher is for trips out into the big, scary world. By that, I mean to Whole Foods, while the Dirac Delta is for trips to the Symphony and restaurants that serve steamed mussels or, whatever the fuck rich white people do. I don't know. But, the times when you have to wear a tie or something, like if you go to church or something like that. I don't go to church because I'm banned from most churches. But if I did manage to not set on fire when going into a house of worship, I would probably carry this sort of knife with me. Also, I want to give you a second opinion here. A lady friend of mine has used this knife, and she took an instant liking to it. Though I've compared it primarily to the Cypher, this is only because I've extensively carried the Cypher. Most of you will be comparing it to the Combat Troodon, and that's her favorite knife, one of them. But she finds them to be very, very thick. For her, the Dirac Delta just feels magical. It's nice and thin and svelte, and she really likes it. She doesn't have to alter her grip either, because of how it contours to her hand, or rather, I should say, how the contours fit her hand. She just loves that knife, and she really likes the side button. It works really, really well for her, and she doesn't have to alter her grip at all to fire this thing. She loves the knife. The only problem she's found is that she cannot close the knife without great effort. I think she actually was like pushing it on like a table or something to try and close it. But again, closing the knife isn't as important as opening it, and she didn't have any trouble opening it. This knife, let me tell you, I've had a couple of people try to close it. It's a bitch. It's a real bitch. This thing is tough. But this is one of her favorite Microtechs, and I think she's going to end up with the smaller Dirac soon. By the way, I'd like to thank Mike at Southern Edges for helping me get this knife. Southern Edges is my local knife store, and more than that, Mike has the coolest selection of knives I've ever seen, and his customer service is the best in the industry. Really, check out Southern Edges online. Mike seems to only carry stuff that I think is cool, and that makes a visit to the store overwhelmingly fun. If you want a Microtech, that's the guy to order from. What would I change about the Dirac Delta? Whether or not you like this knife is going to come down to personal preference for the button location. That's it. Microtechs are hard for me to criticize in any objective way because they do what they're supposed to do. They're made of good materials. They're more reliable than competing designs. They're more comfortable. They do what they're supposed to. They do what it says on the box. So any criticism I can offer is just going to come down to feel. I don't like the side button as much. I really prefer the button to be on top. To me, it just feels more natural. I don't know why I don't have to adjust my grip as much. It's a personal preference. When I pull the knife out of my pocket, my thumb is just instantly on the top button. It's great. But I'm getting used to this. Maybe I just need more time with it. And it's just a matter of personal preference. I have no real criticism of the Dirac Delta. It's super cool and I carry it often. I highly recommend it. Even now that the review is done, I've enjoyed it so much it's still going to be in my rotation. If you need a side button, get one of these. If you prefer the top button, just get a different model. Whichever you choose, you're getting an amazing knife. There is one thing that I would like to see Microtech add, though, and they surely will as time passes and the model proves to be popular. But I'd like to see it sooner rather than later because I want one. I want to see some crazy handle and hardware colors. Blade colors, too. I love the colored Cypher blades. My lovely green one. Don't be surprised if you see a red one before too terribly long. So we need to see different blade shapes too. Though the double edge is my personal preference, lots of people don't view it as very useful, and for them, Microtech needs to produce some single edge blades and a TANTO or two. And I wouldn't mind a TANTO myself. The only problem is, I suspect this is why we haven't seen them already, those blade shapes would ruin the beautiful symmetry. Still, it'd sell more knives, and it'd please even more folks than the side button already does. Final thoughts. This is a great knife. What more can I say? If you've always wanted a Microtech but the button bothered you, well, here's your knife. If you collect Microtechs, here's your knife. Something I haven't touched on is the price. Usually Microtechs this size are about $500, give or take. This one, even the proof run, is just under $400. The standard model will probably be $350 or $360. The Infidel is usually just over $400. Is the Dirac Delta expensive? Yeah, I mean, that's still a lot of money, but it's one of the best values in the OTF world. Good OTFs are always fucking expensive, but this is a lot of knife for your money. Thanks for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening. I'll talk to you soon. Good night.